Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're breaking down a sneaky interesting early season matchup down in Fort Myers, Florida, as the Troy Trojans wrap up a brutal 6-game, 2-week road trip by taking on St. Francis in the Consolation game of the Coconut Hoops tournament at Alico Arena. Tip-off is set for 10 a.m. Central Time, and even though this isn't a ranked showdown, there is a lot riding on this one for both programs. Troy is trying to steady the ship after a tough loss and avoid a 3-game skid, while St. Francis is still chasing its first win of the season in the middle of a huge transition for the program. Let's set the stage, talk key players, what each side needs to do to walk out with a win, and why this game actually matters a lot more than it might look on paper. If you enjoy college hoops breakdowns like this, hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. Setting the stage, Troy's road grind. So let's start with Troy. The Trojans come into this game at 4-4, and that record doesn't tell the whole story. They've been living out of suitcases for the past 2 weeks, grinding through a 6-game road stretch that would test just about any team in the country. This matchup with St. Francis is the final stop on that trip. When you've been on the road this long, legs get tired, shots get short, and focus can slip. That's a real factor here, especially with an early 10 a.m. CT tip. In their opening game at Coconut Hoops, Troy ran into Toledo and came up short. The big storyline from that one? Shooting struggles. They finished just 5 of 28 from three-point range. That's 17.9% from deep. And you're just not going to win many games with numbers like that. But even in that loss, a couple of bright spots stood out. First name that pops off the stat sheet, Theo Seng. Seng led the Trojans with 18 points in that Toledo game. When the offense was stalling and the shots weren't falling from outside, Seng gave them some life and scoring punch. Going into this St. Francis matchup, he's the kind of guy you look at and say, if he gets going early, this whole offense can loosen up. Then there's Thomas Dowd, who has basically been a double-double machine. Against Toledo, he put up 10 points and 11 rebounds, giving him his 4th double-double of the season. That's not just a nice little stat. That ranks him 8th nationally in double-doubles right now. On top of that, he's just 7 rebounds away from hitting 500 for his collegiate career, which is a pretty impressive milestone. Dowd is also averaging 15.6 points per game and a conference-leading 11.1 boards. So he's not just a role player, he's one of the anchors of this team, especially with how much production Troy lost from last year's roster. And that's another huge storyline for Troy this season. Over 60% of last year's scoring walked out the door. That's a massive chunk of offensive production to replace in one offseason. So it's not shocking that Troy's offense has looked a little up and down early in the year. What's encouraging for them, though, is that the scoring hasn't fallen to just one guy. Instead, it's been a collective effort. Right now, Cooper Campbell is leading the way with 17.4 points per game. He's been the primary scorer and a go-to option for this team. Combine that with Dowd's 15.6 points and dominance on the glass, and you've got a legit inside-out foundation. Add in Seng's contributions, and slowly you can see this team's new identity coming together under head coach Scott Cross. Speaking of Cross, this is his 7th season at Troy, and he's quietly built a really solid, consistent program. His record at Troy sits at 107-91, and the Trojans have stacked 4 straight seasons with 20-plus wins. That's not easy to do at this level. Last year, they finished 23-11, which shows this isn't some flash-in-the-pan stretch. There's a standard being set here, so for a program like Troy, games like this, a consolation game in a mid-season tournament against a winless opponent, are the ones you can't afford to sleepwalk through. If you want to keep stacking 20-win seasons, you handle business in spots like this. Now let's flip it over to the other side and talk about St. Francis. The Red Flash are coming into this game at Euro 5. It's been a tough start, and there are a couple reasons for that. First, they're under a new head coach, Luke McConnell. Anytime you have a coaching change, you're dealing with new systems, new expectations, and a roster figuring out where they fit. The first season under a new coach can be bumpy, and that's exactly what's happening so far. Second, they're coming off a rough outing against Belmont. St. Francis lost that one 94-57. A 37-point loss is the kind of game that can either crush your confidence or wake you up. We're going to find out which it is when they take the floor against Troy. But even at 0-5, there are positives for St. Francis, and the biggest one is guard Skylar Wicks. Wicks is averaging 18.6 points per game and has already recorded 2 double-doubles early in the season. That tells you he's not just scoring, but also impacting the game in other ways. Whether that's on the glass or creating for others, he's the clear focal point of the Red Flash offense. If St. Francis has any chance of pulling off a win here, it probably starts with Wicks having a big-time performance. For Troy, that likely means game planning around slowing him down, throwing different defenders at him, making him work for every touch, and trying to force someone else on St. Francis to beat them. There's also a bigger picture story going on with St. Francis that most casual fans might not know about. The program is in the middle of a major transition. St. Francis is in the process of reclassifying to NCAA Division III, with the move expected to be fully in place for the 2028-29 academic year. That kind of long-term shift can hang over a program. Players and recruits know the future is changing. The level of competition, the scholarships, the exposure, all of that is going to look very different in just a few years. So for this current group, they're kind of playing in a unique window. They're still competing at the Division I level, taking on teams like Troy and Belmont, while the roadmap for the program is being rewritten behind the scenes. That can either be a distraction or a motivator. For some players, it becomes, we want to make the most of these last Division I years. For others, it might create a sense of uncertainty. Either way, it adds another layer to this matchup. Now, one cool thing about this game, it's the first ever meeting between Troy and St. Francis. There's no bad blood, no history, no revenge angle, just two teams trying to get back on track and define who they are early in the season. Sometimes that makes for really entertaining basketball because neither team comes in with a mental edge based on past matchups. For Troy, dropping back-to-back games on this trip already hurts. Dropping 3 straight, something they haven't done since early February last season, would be even worse. They're very aware of that. For St. Francis, at Aero 5, that first win of the season can change the whole vibe in the locker room. You go from, we can't catch a break, to, okay, we've got proof this works. So even though it's early, and it's a neutral site consolation game, the urgency is definitely there. Number 1, shoot better from deep. It sounds obvious, but 5 of 28 from 3 is not sustainable. The good news? Cold nights happen. The question is whether that Toledo game was just a one-off or a sign of a bigger issue. If Troy can just get back to a respectable percentage from 3, say mid-30s, that completely changes how defenses have to guard guys like Dowd inside. Number 2, dominate the glass. With Dowd leading the conference in rebounds and closing in on 500 for his career, Troy should own the boards in this matchup. Limiting St. Francis to one shot and getting some extra possessions on the offensive boards can create easy points and break the spirit of a team that's still searching for its first win. Number 3, come out focused, despite the early tip and long road trip. This is where coaching and culture show up. A 10 a.m. local start after a grind of travel is a classic trap spot. If Troy comes out flat, St. Francis has a chance to hang around and make this uncomfortable. For St. Francis, it starts with Skylar Wicks. They need him to be aggressive but efficient, attacking the basket, getting to the line, and forcing Troy to react to him. If Troy has to send extra help his way, it opens up opportunities for teammates who haven't quite broken out yet this season. Second key, limit runs. When you're an Aero 5 team going against a veteran, well-coached group like Troy, the danger is that one 12-0 or 15-2 run just blows the game open. St. Francis has to weather those inevitable waves, use timeouts, slow the tempo if needed, and make sure this doesn't turn into a track meet where Troy's depth can take over. Third, play free. Sometimes when a team is winless, they either tighten up or they decide, we've got nothing to lose. If St. Francis treats this like an opportunity rather than a burden, they might play with the kind of energy and looseness that can lead to an upset. Zooming out a bit, this game is also about momentum. For Troy, a win lets them finish this road trip at 500 overall and then finally head home to face West Georgia on Monday, December 1st, with tip-off at 6 p.m. That game will be streamed on ESPN+, and it's a chance to get back in front of their home crowd and really build a run. You do not want to walk into that home game on a 3-game losing streak. For St. Francis, their schedule doesn't get magically easier just because of the transition they're going through. Getting that first win sooner rather than later is huge for team morale and buy-in for a first-year head coach. So when you look at it from both sides, this Coconut Hoops consolation game has real weight. It's not just another line in the schedule. It's a chance to pivot the narrative of each team's season. So to recap, Troy comes in at 4-4, battle-tested from a long road trip, led by guys like Cooper Campbell, double-double machine Thomas Dowd, and scoring threats like Theo Seng. They're trying to rediscover their shooting touch and avoid something they haven't done since last February, losing 3 in a row. St. Francis rolls in at 0-5 under new head coach Luke McConnell, with standout scorer Skylar Wicks carrying the offensive load and the entire program navigating a long-term move to Division III. It's the first meeting between these two schools. It tips off early at Alico Arena in Fort Myers, and it might not be the headliner game of the day, but it has all the ingredients for a really competitive, meaningful matchup. Who do you think comes out on top? The battle-worn Trojans looking to right the ship? Or the hungry Red Flash chasing that first win? Drop your predictions in the comments. Final score, leading scorer, and tell us if you think Dowd gets that 500th rebound milestone in this one. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit like, subscribe to the channel for more college hoops coverage, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next preview or recap. Thanks for watching and enjoy the game.